Hey guys, tonight we're moving out of the legislative branch and into the executive branch. So we're going to talk about the president, the vice president, the cabinet, and bureaucracy. So I just ruined about half of my vocab terms, but I'll still get them. Alright, so the objective again is 2.3. I told you it was going to be lengthy. Identify the function and powers of the three branches of government. Your vocab: cabinet, federal bureaucracy, War Powers Act, chief of state, commander-in-chief, chief citizen, chief party leader, chief executive, economic leader, judicial leader, chief legislator, and chief diplomat. A lot of chiefdom going on. Alright, so the president, the only qualifications that are listed in the U.S. Constitution are that he or she has to be at least 35 years old, they have to be a natural-born citizen, and they must be a 14-year resident of the United States. So that could technically mean that you could be born in the United States, move to another country, and then come back and live in the United States. As long as you're here for 14 years prior to running for presidency, then you should be fine. So I'm not even old enough to be president. I know what you're all thinking, but one of these. All right, so the election. It needs to happen in November. It happens every 4 years for the presidential election. People forget that we have elections throughout the rest of the years in between these, but people for some reason only think that the president's important, and so they only come out every 4 years to vote, which causes problems in the long run. All right, so we elect a president through what we call the Electoral College process. So yes, we have a general election, and then that president is truly elected by the Electoral College. So there are 538 Electoral College votes out there in the United States. And basically what you would do is, like in North Carolina, we have 13 members of the House, and we have, of course, 2 members in the Senate, just like everybody else. So that means that we get 15 Electoral College votes for North Carolina itself. Okay, well, if you're adding up all of these numbers, then you would get to 535, not 538. Those 3 additional Electoral College votes actually come from Washington, D.C., so you'll learn about that as one of our later amendments in 2B. All right, so in order to be the president, you have to get 270 of the 538 Electoral College votes. If neither candidate wins that 270, then the House of Representatives selects who the president is. Again, we'll get into all of that in Unit 4. So a president serves a term of 4 years. That is written into the Constitution. It wasn't until 1951 in the 22nd Amendment that we limited the president to only 2 terms. We did have one guy, FDR, who would have been president for 16 years, if not even longer, had he not died while he was in office. So he was elected for 4 different terms and reelected, and everybody loved him. Well, he was loved enough to be reelected 4 different times. And after that, we kind of came together and said, you know what, maybe we should not do that again, because as loved as you might be for 16 years, if you were not loved by some people, that's a really long time to deal with a president. So 8 years is technically the max, although you could serve up to 10. We'll talk about that tomorrow during class. All right, so the organization of the executive branch is as follows. It looks like a pyramid, okay? So at the very top of the pyramid, of course, you have the president. That president is in charge of carrying out the laws, okay, or enforcing the laws. The vice president is second in command. We already know that he is truly the head of the Senate, but really is only there in case of a tie. So he is second in command in case something happens to the president. A lot of events that the president might not want to attend or doesn't have time to attend, he can send the vice president in his stead. The cabinet comes after that, and the cabinet is going to be the group of presidential advisors that includes the heads of these top-level executive departments. So the departments are in charge of basically enforcing all of these laws, because the president's not going to go out there like a sheriff and have a little badge and say you're breaking a law. It's up to the executive departments to be able to do that for him, and so he has basically one person who is in charge of that specific department. Washington was the president who started all of this, and Washington finally looked at some stuff and he said, look, I can't do this by myself. So he established the first 3 of the cabinet positions, and there are far more than 3 now. It was the Secretary of State, okay, dealing with foreign relations, the Secretary of Treasury, right, dealing with the money, and the Secretary of War was the first one. Now we call it Secretary of Defense because war seems really aggressive. So those were the first 3 cabinet positions, and of course, they have developed over time. So at any particular time in a cabinet meeting, this is probably what you're going to see. So when we're watching Dave, keep a close lookout for what's going to happen around this table. So you would have basically the people who are going to be the heads of the departments right around the table, and then some additional people off to the side. So you know you're a top dog if you can have a seat at the table at the cabinet meeting with the president. All right, so again, with a triangle. The federal bureaucracy is at the very bottom of the triangle, and only because it is so large. So the president, 1 man. Vice president, under the president, 1 man. Underneath that, you have a bunch of men and women who are the cabinet members. And then the federal bureaucracy takes it, and it's basically anybody who works for one of those departments. Okay, so these are the agencies and employees of the executive branch. This is why the executive branch is the largest of all the branches, because of the federal bureaucracy that is contained. In case you need a visual. All right, so the powers of the president, we already know that he is supposed to enforce the laws. All right, also having the power to veto or reject laws. He is the head of the military, known as the commander-in-chief. The president is the person who makes treaties, appoints heads of the executive agencies, federal judges, and ambassadors. Okay, so again, he can appoint them, but they have to still be approved by the Senate. So that's checks and balances. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And of course, he can reduce the sentences of people convicted of crimes. So we'll talk about pardons and reprieves a little bit later on as well. So the War Powers Act, guys, this is on every single test that you will see, not only in civics and economics, but in U.S. history as well. We love the War Powers Act. I'm not really sure why it's on every single test, but because it is, we're going to make sure that we know it. So the War Powers Act, if you read the small print, it says the exact same thing that the large print does, but in much more complicated terms. So basically, the War Powers Act says that troops can stay no more than 60 days without congressional approval. Okay, which basically means that a president can send in troops for 60 days, but after that, you need to have congressional approval to do that. It does not say anything about the actual war itself. The president doesn't have the power to declare war, right? Congress has the power to declare war. So, although he can send in troops, he doesn't have the power to actually declare war. So, come into class tomorrow and be the first person to tell me how many times and in which wars we have actually declared war in. Extra credit. All right, so the roles of the president are as follows. And I will mention these probably in class as the hats of the president, or the hats that the president wears. But these are the roles of the president. And as a head of state, he performs ceremonial duties. He is a symbol of the United States. So I'll give some pictures because it always... So in this role, he might be, and this is Obama, if you can see, it's super small, during his inauguration. So again, this is the chief of state. This is a ceremonial duty. All right, so again, Commander-in-Chief being the head of the armed forces. He is in charge of all of... Okay, so you can see some leaders behind him of the armed forces. All right, so as chief citizen, he is a model citizen. So he's going to act just like you, me, because I always get to throw out the first pitch at a baseball game. Maybe not. All right, the chief party leader, and this is where a lot of what we call, and you'll hear the word during the election process, the incumbent. Okay, it's the person who is already in office, and if you are already in office, then you hold a lot of pull as far as politics are concerned. So as the chief party leader, you're going to be the leader of that political party, and you are going to try to help other people in your political party become elected, or, you know, even get yourself reelected. All right, so as the chief executive, the president is in charge of carrying out the nation's laws. That's what we say, enforcing the laws. He also has the appointment of officials to, in this capacity, to be. So, this is Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, back when she was Secretary of State. Now, of course, she is the Democratic Party's candidate for the presidency now. So again, that's kind of pulling in multiple directions, right? Because I can use the chief party leader as well. Quite a few wrinkles ago. Both of them look so much younger at the beginning of this. Maybe I won't want to be president one day. It'll make me look older. All right, so the economic leader, guys, is the person who writes the federal budget. Now, yes, it's supposed to be the president, but unless you're watching Dave, no one person is going to sit down and write the entire federal budget, right? I don't even sit down and write the entire budget from a household, much less one for an entire country. But this is the person who is putting forth the budget that is written by Office of Management and Budget. And of course, the president has a lot of say-so and pull in this process. Very difficult to find a copy of the actual federal budget, shockingly enough. So we do the best we can with pictures. All right, judicial leader. Couple of different things here. Exercising right to grant pardons. This is where you say, you might be guilty of a crime, but I'm going to let you go. Or I don't think that you're guilty of a crime, so I'm going to let you go. If you remember at the beginning, it's like every Thanksgiving they do this pardon of the turkey thing, which I'm pretty sure they just put the turkey back on the farm somewhere and like, I need you to get fatter. And I'll cut your head off next year. But they pardon a turkey every year. And then, of course, appointing federal judges. Now, again, they have to be approved by the Senate, but the president does have the power to appoint. All right, so a lot of things going on. We're pardoning a turkey. This is Sotomayor, okay? And this is one of the appointments that President Obama made to the U.S. Supreme Court. This guy up here in the top right-hand side with the blue circle around his face was Scalia. He was a member of the U.S. Supreme Court who passed away earlier this year, and so his seat is still vacant. And we'll talk about what that looks like a little bit later on when we talk about the judicial branch. All right, the chief legislator, as the president, that he has the power to propose legislation. Again, you can't propose it in Congress, but you can have some pull behind it. And of course, reporting to Congress every year in the State of the Union address is part of this as well. All right, chief diplomat being the last one, oversees relations with other countries. Anytime we're dealing with another country, the president's going to be wearing his chief diplomatic hat.